Hello and welcome to my ePortfolio. This ePortfolio was completed as a capstone project in the Masters of Educational Technology program at the University of British Columbia. In this guided tour video, I'll show the purpose and organization of the ePortfolio based on my learning through MET, the Masters of Educational Technology. My learning through the program will be demonstrated by several artifacts I've created, as well as reflections on those artifacts. These will demonstrate my learning and the connections I've made with several aspects within the MET program. This EP was developed using Adobe Dreamweaver. As shown on this welcoming page down in the bottom green box here, I have several purposes for my EP. Primarily, these are to fulfill teacher qualification, service of British Columbia requirements, the capstone experience requirements of MET, and several personal goals that I have in linking theory to practice. The main organization of my EP focuses on the metaphor, which is already demonstrated in this banner at the top, where a web of learning and practice, a spider's web, really demonstrates the various interlinkages I've been able to build in the MET program. So I describe the metaphor here, and down at the bottom is an image of this metaphor. Around the outside are several anchors that the web, my web of learning, is connected to, and these anchors are what I feel I've learned from. They are the sources of learning for me. Then in the web itself are strands. The outer orb, made up of the strands on the outside of the web, consists of theory. This is the information I've garnered mostly from my anchors, and use that information then to apply to practice, and finally the practice itself, the things I do in the classroom. And this really is the structure of the EP, and I feel it's an effective structure for my audience of professors in the MET program, fellow colleagues in the MET program, colleagues at work, family, future students possibly, and anybody who accesses this EP online. So this structure is also demonstrated in the navigation of the EP, shown by the menu bar at the top here. Hovering over different parts will open up access to different parts of the website. This same menu bar is at the bottom, so if you end up on a long page and you scroll to the bottom, you can access other parts as well. So I've shown you the introduction and the metaphor page here. The ePortfolio video tour is where this video is located, and that's where you can access this video. Then moving on to the artifacts, I want to give a brief tour of the artifacts. Before I do that, for each of the sections that I've used to structure my EP, the theory to practice, and educational practice, you can see I have a section on my menu bar here. The top item in each of these sections represents an overall reflection of that section, and it shows where I've been, what my practice used to be many years ago before I entered the MET program. It shows where I am from my learning in the MET program, and some goals of where I'm going from the MET program. Also throughout the website you'll find these quotes in these special highlighted boxes. These are quotes that have been meaningful to me and helped me with learning as well. Then at the bottom of each section are the references for that section, which represent the sources of my learning as in the MET program. So within the theory section, the main set of artifacts starts with the concept maps, and again I want to show my learning. So this concept map, created in ETEC 512, has a small part over here on constructivism. This section here is also related to constructivism, but the main focus of constructivism, which I feel is the main central focus of the MET program as far as theory is concerned, is this part over here. Then in ETEC 530, a later course, constructivism has really grown for me, and I feel a lot more confident now that I've completed ETEC 530, that I have a good grasp of constructivism and how to apply that in practice. And then for each artifact I have in my EP, I've developed a short reflection with references on the end of that as well. So this leads to my first website I was involved in. This was a group project for ETEC 512 with Catherine, Tara, Drew, and Mike. And we were able to create a website on constructivism in Google Sites that we presented to the class for a week of learning. I feel this website represents a very rudimentary level of knowledge of constructivism, and again, my learning from ETEC 530 and 565A have really built on that. So again, the reflection on that. And then finally, in the last section of the theory artifacts, I'm reflecting on a wiki project for ETEC 510. In this wiki, I summarized and outlined a recursive model of instructional design proposed by Jerry Willis, called the R2D2 model, and I found that this model really gave me personal growth in learning, changing me from a content-focused style to a more student-focused style, where I take student ideas and student needs into account in my instructional design. Moving then on to theory to practice, again a main reflection on that. A big part of my theory to practice reflection focuses on the interactive whiteboard, because I first used interactive whiteboards probably about 10 years ago now, and I used them basically as a replacement tool for a regular interactive whiteboard, and it really was a didactic teaching tool for me and a transmissionist model. So I've learned a lot through the MET program about how to use the interactive whiteboard, and I've moved in a progression, as this cartoon from ETEC 511 shows, to a more student-centered focus in using the interactive whiteboard. So again, where I've been, where I am, and where I'm going is a reflection on that. So the first artifact I look at in theory to practice is an essay in ETEC 511 that summarized the necessary changes that I felt need to be made in a lot of different ways to encourage teachers to use interactive whiteboards in a constructive way. So after that then, and directly following up on that, is a research proposal I made for ETEC 500 that proposed to do an in-depth study on a profound professional development program that would attempt to shift teachers over a long term, actually a year or more, from a didactic use of the interactive whiteboard to a more profound and constructivist use of the interactive whiteboard. So then the final artifact in the theory to practice is more of a later course, ETEC 533, that I'm taking concurrently with ETEC 590 to create this EP. I've focused on in one project on simulations and how they are incredibly helpful in chemistry to bring concepts that students just can't see, submicroscopic processes that are invisible, and bring them into a visible world using animation and visualization tools like graphs and things like that. Now, simulations are incredible in gaining learning based on prior knowledge, but also encouraging changes in misconceptions and preconceptions to develop good learning. So that's the theory to practice section, and then of course I focus on the educational practice, the actual practice of bringing materials that I've developed into my classroom. In the general reflection of that, I have two large green boxes shown here. The top one represents a list of suggestions by Mark Winchittle to practically bring constructivist ideas into the classroom, and what students and teachers can do to help students learn in a constructive manner. Combining that with the sections model of Bates and Poole, which I found incredible in helping me understand the usefulness of technology in the classroom as well, has made it an incredible pair of tools for me to apply in the classroom, to apply to my practice. And these are really the two tools that I've applied in the practice of developing the artifacts in this section as well. So the first here is the Biome Web Quest I made in ETEC 530. It's a website that leads students through a problem-solving process in learning about biomes. And the problem engages the students and it draws them in, and it gets them focused on learning, and the whole guided learning process possible through the website is I found, and I was able to actually use this in a real-life classroom, and incredible learning resulting from that, and then showing my reflections on that as well. The next section is a artifact built in ETEC 565A, and I have shown that artifact through some screencasts. And this is an artifact that I developed for Pre-Calculus 12, British Columbia curriculum, in Moodle, using Moodle. I've used Moodle for many years already, but I never really used it to teach with. We use it as a school to inform parents of homework due dates, inform students, help them keep track in a schedule-like way, provide information, provide resources for the students to access and use, but really not to teach. And I found Moodle just an incredible tool in being able to teach. And then with that, in ETEC 565, we had to create an ePortfolio on just the course. And this section of the ePortfolio shows my reflections on the Moodle course I was able to develop. The last artifact in the practice section was built in ETEC 510, again very early on in my program, where a group of students, shown here, we were able to develop a trigonometry unit for students in programs in lower level math programs, more focused on apprenticeship. And we built this trigonometry unit in Edmodo. And Edmodo is an online, completely online learning management system in blog format. So this blog format really is a link to the 21st century learner. And below here, again, I have a reflection on it, but in this EP I've also done a Bates and Poole sections reflection on the Edmodo experience. And although I find Edmodo somewhat lacking in areas from the sections model, I still think it can be used as a useful and helpful tool for learning. So that really completes the artifacts. So to summarize that, I've provided a cumulative reflection here, again focusing on my metaphor and the web-like nature of my learning that I've experienced in the MET program. So this journey of learning, just incredibly linking things together and incredible growing and understanding. So I've provided some thoughts in the ePortfolio, some challenges that I've had to deal with in building this ePortfolio, focusing on some of the feedback I received and what I did about it in the ePortfolio, but then also a reflection on my anchors. Remember the anchors around that have held me up, and I reflect on what those anchors have meant for me and how they have helped me through the MET program. So then I have a page on references and credits for all the photographs I've included, a complete reference page showing just an incredible amount of information on theory and practice as given by the MET program, what I've been able to research and be exposed to. And finally, the end of the EP is an assessment rubric that I've created to help peers and even self-assessment to develop a way of analyzing whether this EP fulfills my purposes. And then at the bottom here there's a comment section that can be filled in. So I hope you've enjoyed this basically whirlwind tour of my ePortfolio. I hope you've been able to add to your web of learning by having this experience, and I really thank you for watching, and I wish you the best.